Yeah, sure. And so initially, when I first was born was in Chidambaram, and then from there we moved to a place called Sirhari, which is part of the Tamil Nadu, and then we moved to Chennai. Typical village girl, you may say, at that time. When I went to Chennai, I had no idea about any of those cultures and anything else. My grandfather, he was a priest, and my mom totally followed pretty much all the traditional things that they would do. And growing up, we in that the strictest thing, mom will say some things are allowed, some things are not allowed. And so you can do this, you can't do this, you have to be like this, and you have to, you have to, when somebody washing the dishes, you need to wash it well, you need to wash it and put it in this particular way, and the clothes need to be done this particular way, and there is some puja done, you have to be like this for the puja. Now, all those restrictions. On the one hand, I used to think, my God, why so many restrictions in life? On the other hand, I'll say, I hope I can have a freedom from all this stuff, doing this just because somebody tells you so. So that is pretty much my background. Going to school, coming back, that's about it, and nothing much. No socializing, nothing. My father was very protective of me. He would not let me get out of the house without somebody accompanying me. And I would say, oh my God, if I have to ask someone to accompany me to go to a friend's place, I would rather not go. So that is my background, upbringing, and even going to the uni, just going to the uni and back, no socializing whatsoever. And that's how it is. The only activities other than that is at home. So I developed more interest in singing and stitching, all the other stuff which you sit at home and do. So that is pretty much my background until I got married, and that is when I found, my God, I have wings. I can now go and do whatever I want because my husband pretty much allowed me to do whatever I want to do. So that is when I first felt sort of independent in some ways or other. That's my background.
That's so interesting, Auntie. And I'm sure a lot of the elder mums here, I guess, can also relate to that in some way or the other. And Kirti, I mean, how did this impact your upbringing? Can you share a little bit more about your perspectives on that?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, we moved, so mum didn't mention that my biological father died quite before I was born, actually. So, I think you can tell mum's upbringing is so traditional, and there was a lot of that lack of, I guess, experience in the world until she met my father. And then, of course, he died 5 years after they met, and mum had 2 kids, so she made that journey to Australia when I was 2. So I don't recall that journey, of course, but I do recall, she had to find her feet in Australia as we were trying to acclimatize to being in a different environment, a different culture, and feeling quite alien, I guess, in that sense of there weren't very many Indians around in those 80s in Australia, and it was quite overwhelming. And mum's, of course, going through her own journey there after losing my dad, and I had an older brother with me, so he was really good. He always sort of looked out for me, and I wasn't the most easy kid to handle, and so he would mum's laughing away, but he would generally sort of bring me back into to find me in shopping centers and bring me back to safety. And so we were a really strong unit. It was just us 3. Sometimes it felt like it was us 3 against the world. So culture was difficult because, of course, you grew up here and you're trying to fit into Australian culture, whatever that is. That's another discussion. But versus we'd do pujas at home, and it was easy to differentiate. In fact, even my name Kirthi is my Indian name, and for very many years, everyone knew me as Thanu, and it really felt like 2 different personalities. It was Thanu at school and with my Aussie friends, and Kirthi at home and with the Indian community. And it wasn't until after uni days that people started, like friends would acknowledge that actually, Kirthi and Thanu were the same person. And even some of the Indian community wouldn't know that they were anyway. So it was quite easy to segregate. that sort of cultural upbringing. And, with mum, she did show us a lot of that beauty of Indian culture. I always really liked it, the pujas, and I learned Veena. So it was always trying to figure out where I fit in, or how to, marry the two together.
Yeah, because I remember when we were talking, I was like, what do I call you? Thanu, Kirthi, what's your preference, right?
Yeah, and look, over the years, I mean, I still medically am Thanu because it's just easier on my degree, but I definitely prefer Kirthi, and many of my close friends now call me Kirthi. So it's, I've been able to incorporate that into my life. But yeah, for a long time, it was easy to keep it separate.
Separate, yeah, for sure. And I guess, Aunty, what were your when you're moving countries, you had, as you shared earlier, a second marriage, and it was, as Kirthi, you shared, 3 of you against the world. Aunty, what were your expectations of life in Australia? How did you find yourself adapting to whole new world, new freedoms, as you said?
What made me move out of India was being a widow, where the life was not going to be easy there. And I didn't think that I could live by myself. I'm talking about more than 40 years back now. So if I have to live there by myself with the kids, that would not have been easy. And by myself. And I wanted to be by myself because I didn't want to be with anybody else, even though I have the brothers and sister and my parents, everybody was there at that time. I really didn't want to be under somebody, because I thought I would have to compromise on my independence, which I didn't want. So when my brother said, brother who was here, who said, you can come here and live, and whatever you want, you can do, I thought, wow, this is good opportunity. I wanted to get out and do whatever. I think Malini, who's there, she would know. Her mother was the one who has been really telling me, things will be fine, you can go. I was so scared to get out of India. I have never known what a foreign country is like. And she said, you'll be fine, it is like here, don't worry, she said. And I used to talk to her a lot of times.
Ask her to join us, actually.
Yeah, okay. And I was actually talking to her about what it means to be outside. And that Aunty was helping me to feel okay to move. And what drove me was wanting to have the independence. I don't want to be called, there is so many discrimination they have, because you are a widow, you can't do this, you can't participate in this, and you can't, there is restrictions, which I felt it's not fair, because at the age of 26, nobody can tell me that I can't live my life. So I just wanted to break that and wanted to get out of this. And that is why this move was there. Once I moved, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I really wanted to have, I wanted to have a life where I have my independence, I can look after my kids, and I can be on my own. And for that reason, I also took up studies here, because my qualification may not be fully used here in the way they will look at the qualifications in Australia. So I said, okay, I will do another degree, which will give me the professional qualification. So I did my bachelor's in computer science at that time, and then went on to the job, because I wanted to take up a job and support the kids the way I want to bring them up, and not be dependent on somebody else supporting me. And the one thing, even though my parents said, you can live with me, my logical mind said, this guy who was 30 years old, not even 30, is gone. My father at that time was over 60. How is he going to support me? So I said, no, I have to be on my own. So that is what drove me to come here. And it wasn't, culturally different. There's so many things I need to work through to get a job here, work in the community here, and be part of the National Bank for so many years. I worked there nearly 30 years. And, to look after the kids as well. It wasn't easy, but I think it is well worth it.
I was just going to say, Auntie, I'm not sure if you can read the chat, but there's Sneha said, it's so powerful to make the choice to live your life truly. And Janvi said, Sivakami, Auntie, you're incredible. And earlier, Alan, who is actually on Trikone's board, he said something, let me just see. He said, Rebel, Sivakami, rebel from childhood. Thank you. And there's so many other
That's where I get
it. So that's where you get it from, you say? Got it from my mama. Okay. And Kirti, I guess, earlier we were talking about life, identity, and, moving and finding your like sort of in between, I guess, as we say that like people who've lived in one country move to the other and you're like trying to balance the two. Can you share more about that move to Australia and you finding your identity through the years? Because I know you moved when you were 2 years old.
Yeah, I did. And look, I did, my age, it was the early 80s back then. And there weren't that many Indians. And I think really, it was a time when vegetarian included chicken, like nobody really got your diet. Mum would make me take idlis to school, which was fine, except people would tease me about it. And, I loved idlis, but it was just always trying to dim down my culture because you just don't, school feels like something you need to survive, or it did to me anyway. And I think that feeling that you've just got to make it or survive was probably why, it took such a long time to come to terms with my sexuality, because I don't think I could face something else that made me different at that time. It just felt like, I just want to be like everyone else, and not be, different. I mean, there was always a little bit of teasing, and it always made me feel like I had to work that little bit harder to fit in, but there was never anything overtly, violent or anything like that towards me. And we had some really good supports. I remember my tennis coach was a lovely guy that really took us on, like Narendra and I, under our wings. And like we had, and over the years, a lot of other Indians came and we grew that community too. So it just took time, I think. But certainly for me, I think, you could see my mom is a pretty amazing person. And I think there was a big fear for me of, I don't think I can disappoint her. She's had so much struggle in her life. And I think for me, being this good Indian daughter felt far more important than my sexuality for a very long time. And I couldn't bear to give her any more pain. She's had a fair amount. So that was definitely part of, and that's part of the identity, is being part out. And as I said, my dream is that eventually it's not seen as something painful if your son or daughter.
It's so hard. Tina sent me the click.
What is hard in it?
Click பண்ண ஒண்ணுமே வரல அது.
Hey mama, we can see you. I hear you. That's my mom.
You can't see him.
I've just muted them so you can hear.
But yeah, I think anyway, but identity wise, it was very much, and it comes, I think this is the thing with all of us, right? Teenage is difficult, and it's not easy for a lot of people. So I don't think it's unique to Indian necessarily, but I think it's sort of, I don't think it was always a very safe space to explore my sexuality in those years. And to be honest, I didn't even think about it for a long time. And until in my 20s, I'd say.
Yeah, I know a lot of us here, me included, can totally relate to that. I mean, I know many from our community too, and I see some names on the call here today. Hello to 42 people here. That's so nice. Who felt that, oh, I don't want to burden them, I don't want to make them unhappy, my parents are important to me, and balancing that I know is extremely difficult. So I guess that's a really nice segue to, I guess, chapter 2. But I first wanted to share something from Divya Krishnan. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's an auntie or not, but I would love to share this. She says, I think understanding our parents' journey is so critical in understanding things about ourselves that we sometimes fail to piece together. So true. Your story reflects that of a lot of parents, Auntie Sivakami. Truly humbling and heartwarming that you were so strong and so grounded in your independence and strength. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So before I jump into, I guess, the second chapter, what I missed actually sharing in my overzealousness to get started with everyone is the reason why we're actually here today is our group Trikone had read an article that Kirthi and her wife Anita were featured in, an Indian link. And I might just share that article with everyone here again today if you haven't seen it yet. But really that was the catalyst when we shared it we've got a closed Facebook group there. I've just shared the link. We've got a closed Facebook group, Queer South Asian women, and there's also Queer South Asians in Australia. And when we shared that link with everyone, they were so excited to see it, to see what's possible and to learn more about your story. So when I managed to actually get in touch with Kirthi through the photographer at her wedding, which is really nice, where there's a will, there's a way, right? And in speaking to Kirthi, I felt an instant connection, I guess, really resonated, of course, with her story. I'm probably a few steps behind you at the moment. And she then suggested bringing Aunty Sivakami in, and we thought, that's really good because usually you hear from our community, but I know that having your parents in that journey is so difficult and trying and still rewarding at the end of it. So that really brings us into the second chapter, as I mentioned earlier, which was really about your coming out story, Kirthi. So, you talked about identity and that balance between your happiness and your parents. Tell us, when did you realize that the whole good Indian boy wasn't really something for you?
Well, I think, I think parallel to, so I guess a lot of Indians would resonate with this, where you've got your cultural expectations. And so mum was very good at scouring matrimony.com and talking to aunties. And there was usually on a weekly basis a good Indian boy to meet. And they could have been, I could be chatting online with them. I could be meeting them in person. Some of these were interstate meetings. It's like another full-time job. And it just always felt to me, and it really wasn't that I was ever, for the most part, attracted to women. It was just nothing was working with men. And I mean, a lot of it was just this fear of my sexuality, perhaps, but we don't have to go through that per se today, but it was very much, why isn't this working? And then, parallel to that, I have a lot of friends who are meeting their partners and settling down. And, I'd always go to them, what does it feel like? Do you guys, is it butterflies in your stomach like you see on TV? Or is it, like, I guess I could see you again, or not, I didn't know, like maybe love grows slowly. And a lot of them were saying, you'll know when it's the one. And so it started to dawn on me that maybe this isn't for me, and it actually took meeting someone that I really liked. So meeting, I guess your first crush was really in my 20s, and it happened to be a friend of a friend of mine, and a woman. And, for the first time, I got those butterflies, and of course it was quite scary. It wasn't really what I was planning for my future, which was to marry and settle and, have the family. So it was quite scary, and not something I really wanted to go and explore, let's be honest, like at the start. But I guess over time, it became clear to me that that's sort of my path. So it just, I think it was a combination of both, why isn't it working in a heterosexual field? And certainly my mum, I think it helped her in some ways that there was this element of, it wasn't, I think she always felt like, I really did try and, to make it work. Though a lot of that was because, for me, it was really hard to admit my sexuality, even to myself, for a very long time. And anyway, and then I'm sure you may ask later about Anita and how we met, but I think it took a lot of not working with men to start opening that up for me.
Yeah, I know I'll just share what Sneha here said. And actually, I know Sneha from beyond Trikone, and she said, so resonate with the journey. It feels like a full-time job of meeting guys from matrimonials. Yeah. That's so funny. So, well, Kirthi, yes, I'm going to definitely ask you about how you met Anita. But before that, just how did you prepare yourself to tell your family? I know I did in a massive panic attack and I regretted it immediately. But how did you actually, what were the steps you took to get there?
I think one of the things, and I'm sure it'll resonate from others here, but you're so afraid of losing your family, and it may not be, I think, again, it's universal, right? You're really, your roots are your family. And so I had to overcome that. And actually, one of the things I did do before I spoke to my mum was to see a therapist. And a lot of that was just to, I mean, this is years of therapy sort of to a certain degree, but he describes a safety net. And I think a lot of it is you need to know that you're going to be okay. So the first thing I did before I told my mum in particular was I made sure I felt that I would be okay. And part of that was talking to friends and seeing a therapist, and that sort of gives you the courage to know that even if she says, I never want to see you again, which would be my worst nightmare, that you'd have enough community around you that you would be able to go through that. And so that was the first thing I did. And then I did so it did take a lot of courage. And I think for me, it was, you know, every week there'd be this new match on my inbox. And then there were, like, I remember there was a time, there was someone calling me from India when I was at work who was a matrimony matcher. And he's like, you know, what are you looking for? And I'm like, I cannot keep doing this. Like, it just seems like such a lie and a lot of effort and time that's not very well spent. So I'm like, I have to tell my mom so that she'll stop looking for me for boys. And so those were my two motivations, you know, knowing that I'd be okay, and also knowing that even though I hadn't at that time found anyone, you know, it wasn't that I was dating anyone, but I just knew I couldn't keep going. Like, it was getting to the point where I knew that I can't just have her keep sending me these matches in my inbox. And it wasn't fair to them, it was wasting other people's time too. So that's what prompted me. And I don't know if it was a panic, but it was very much, you know, we were sitting, I think we were in mum's house. So we have this routine where I'd go to mum's when I was living in Melbourne every Sunday, mostly to take some takeaway containers of food for the week. But also I mean, my mum's an amazing cook, I'll just put that out there, but also to have a chat. And that was us time. And so it was in one of those times. And I just said, look, I think I might like women. And I wasn't specific to say I was gay. To be honest, I wasn't even sure of it myself, but it was more, could you please just give me some chance to figure this out? You know, maybe the weekly inbox set up so the guys wasn't a great idea right now. And look, I might ask mum to share how she took it, but I think it was difficult. And this was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe now. Like, it wasn't ridiculously long ago, but it was a while ago. And mum, I might ask you to sort of share. It wasn't a great moment. But she'd never made me feel like I wasn't her daughter. You know, she never made me feel like I was shunned. But it was challenging for sure.
Thanks for sharing that. I know it can be really painful, and I'm actually getting a bit teary because it's like, you know, it's such a similar experience. But Aunty, I know we talked about this. Can you share a little bit more about, you know, how did you take it? What were your feelings at the time? And, you know, were there any particular worries that you had?
Absolutely. And it wasn't easy to take. I mean, I was, I guess, started to think about what does it all mean and why is it like this, and is it so hard like this? And also, I normally go to my brother whenever I want to cry, and I was going and crying to him, and who's here now, right now, sitting there watching. And I was talking to my husband. My husband was saying, Ranga, he was saying that he said, this is not on, you can't do this and all that stuff. And I said to him, whether on or not on, it doesn't matter. You just have to accept it, but it is hard. It is very hard to accept. And I was thinking also, the worry was what type of a life she's going to have, because people discriminate with so many things. And what type of a life this is going to be, how is it going to be? And I said, and also I told her that one thing. I said, you need to be really, really, really sure this is what you want. And this is what you're looking for. And before we do anything else, because that's important, that it doesn't matter what it is, but you know, what is it that you're looking for? So you have to just get that part sorted. And then you can see who you want to be with. So that was my biggest worry. And some people, is it really, do you know what you want? Or is it just you're saying it? And that was my biggest concern. And I said, first find out. and then we can work through what it is. And then I think that's when she went to this therapist and whatever. She went through and looked at what is it. And so it was a long journey to come this far. Wasn't easy. And yeah, so I needed the support, talking to the people, getting the support wherever possible. And you know, some people may accept, some may not accept, but I have never worried about what the society thinks about me, because society, they don't live my life anyway. It is my life, and I live the way I want to live. They can support, they may not support it. It is immaterial to me. I never thought, you know, and I'm not looking for somebody to, you know, support me. I'm looking for my life, and I want to live my life, whatever makes me happy, and that's what it is. And so I never thought about all the other things. I was only worried about her and the Kirthi, and I was thinking what type of life she's going to have. Is it going to be practical living like this? And my son helped me a lot as well. And he was giving me the stats. He was telling me, and I think the Bhuvana teacher would know about my son, Niranjan. He said, he gave me, you know what, Mom, this is normal now. It is not like your age when you were growing up. This is normal. So you just have to see. I had one question for him. If Kirthi has a child and you have a child, will you let them play together? Was what I asked him. Not even in my mind, Mom. This is actually what is there right now today. And that's how it is. This is 20% of the world population are like this. He showed me some of the sculptures from the Indian temple. It's already there. So I don't understand why you are even thinking about it. You see, I'm so happy for her. She is, you know, finding herself. Why are you so worried? So that is, these are the things which helped me, and some of the friends who supported. So that is basically what went into my mind. When she came and said that, you know what, I'm just going to tell you this is what I am. And I was just saying, and I found somebody, I think I'm telling before she's telling about it, but I said the first thing, the thought that came to my mind is, I'm happy she found somebody. That's the first thought that came to my mind. And then the next thing was, my God, how this is going to work. But it is important that she has somebody, you know, some companionship. That's important. So that's what came to my mind. And then everything else came. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Auntie. And actually, the temple that you mentioned, Khajuraho Temple, was the subject of our Mardi Gras float many years ago. I'm talking maybe 10 years ago now. Those were good memories. And I just also want to, well, first of all, to everyone, just feel free to drop in your questions, but I'm also really enjoying reading some of your comments that I might just read for Auntie. And Kirthi and Rupesh earlier said, trying to make it work with the opposite sex to keep up the tradition is a real struggle. Tina says, you are amazing, Sivakami Atai. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Kunal, who is on our board, I said mentioned earlier, he said it's really lovely, and honestly I echo this, to see so many of Kirti's extended family members here. And I saw Auntie Meena and her husband, who I believe is your brother, you know, vigorously nodding along. So it's just so heartwarming, and I'm sure that, you know, it's been a process for everyone, but it's lovely to see. Swarupai, he also said, totally agreed. Great to see such a supportive family. Gayatri, I think Auntie Gayatri, she said, you are such an inspiration. Even and Sneha said, you're amazing. That's the way to live life, not to care what society would think. And I know that that is a very major concern still for many of us, you know, where in Hindi, as they say, log kya kahenge, which is literally what will people say. And over the years, we've realized people will always find something to say, you know, your hot news one day and not so much the second. Lakshmi said, what a beautiful, supportive family you have, Kirthi. And Geeta said, for our family, Kirthi, or Auntie Geeta, I guess, for our family, Kirthi and Sivakami have removed the stigma and set the path for future generations. And that is so true. It takes, you know, a little ripple in the pond, I guess, to normalize things so that you make it easier for the next person in, you know, your family. So I guess that also brings with it maybe a lot of pressure, you know, to be the trailblazing one, the rebel. So again, I would encourage everyone, please, to share your questions in the chat. I am reading them and also reading them out. But maybe back to Kirti, you know, as Aunty was going through this whole process, I'm sure so were you. What was going through your mind at that time, and, you know, how did you find ways to cope?
I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but essentially, when I sort of came out, I caught the first time because, as I said, I wasn't seeing anyone at the time, and it became a bit of not a taboo subject. We just didn't talk about it anymore. We didn't talk about my life. I wasn't living at home. I was living out of home, so it was a bit easy to, and I certainly think that made it easier. I didn't have to explain where I was or who I was seeing, and I sort of resolved that, look, you know, there was enough. I think the main thing there was we have a lot of trust, Mum and I, and it's not been an easy journey. You know, we sound like a really close unit now, and we are, but, you know, we went through our times for sure, like every family has, you know, and I think really that was the key. I think she trusted me to know what would make me happy, and I trusted that she would always love me. You know, there was this element of, I knew she'd have my back, and even if she wasn't happy, and even if it meant it wasn't quite what she wanted, eventually she'd come around. And I think that's something that I feel very blessed about. I know that's not the same for everyone, but I really felt grateful. I think telling my father, so my mum's married now, I don't know if she's mentioned, my father had a fall actually, so, you know, he would have, I would have loved him to be part of this, because he's a really, you know, I have to say, he really brought a lot of love to our family. So we weren't great for a while, you know, a lot of conflicts, you know, not about my sexuality, just, you know, in general, growing up, you know, teen angst sort of stuff. And he came in my 20s, early 20s. Mum got married. His name's Rangai, so he's from India. And I have to say, you know, I really want to acknowledge that he brought a lot of love, and he brought a lot of unconditional love. And I think he really helped us all see that, you know, love is love. And not that he actually supported me at the beginning. He took a bit of time, but he's just a big softie. And there's this element of, I knew he would come around, and that really helped. It really helped me come out, like have that trust for my family. And I think even with Mum, you know, he helped her really express her love. So, you know, in childhood, she was always very loving, but sometimes it got hard to know, you know, and she really, he really showed her and us how to express it. I think that's the two elements there, is trust and love, really. You know, you sort of trust. I trusted my family that they would have my back, and they did, and I do, and I'm grateful. And I think Mum, you know, there was this trust that she had in me as well, that, you know, I would eventually, took a while, find what made me happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, question for both of you, Aunty Sivakami and Kirti, you know, would you say throughout this journey, would you say there was a particular turning point, like any specific sort of moment or moments that really, you know, got you over that hump and helped you maybe reconcile these challenges?
I think for me, the turning point would be, I think, you know, that sort of falling in love feeling with a woman. I think for me, that was my turning point, because there's no going back after that. And then it was also feeling confident in myself, like trusting that I'm going to be okay. You know, whatever happens, if all my family don't want to talk to me again, I would be okay. You know, and I certainly, telling my friends helped that as well. Like, you know, you never know how people will react. And I have to admit, I didn't know many gay people before I started coming out. So, you know, and even non-Indians, you have no idea. And so having friends accept me, and then, you know, I knew there'd always be some sort of family I could fashion for myself if needed. So that would be my turning point. I think knowing that, you know, this is my path, and knowing that I could always find people who would have my back.
From my perspective, of course, from my perspective, I know that my family has always been there for me. My brothers, you know, always, even though I never listened to what they asked me to do, they know that. But no matter what I select, no matter what I do, they're always there behind me. all my brother, sister, and they always, and my parents to some extent. So that gives you the confidence, strength to face some of these challenges in life. And somebody saying, you know what, you do whatever you want, I'll support you, is the biggest thing you can get. And that's what my brother, who's here right now, he told me, you come here, I will support you no matter what. And that's important. And the same way with Kirti's, getting married and all, don't worry about anybody else. If you want to get her married, we will do it. So that type of a support. And the brothers have been there all the time, supporting me. And but what is the important bit is that, as Veena was saying, I need to make up my mind how I want to do it. So it is for me to make that call, and they are there to support. But I have to be upfront saying this is what I want. And then they are there. So that is what, so that is where I came in. And I have to say, this girl wants the Indian marriage, I want to do the Indian marriage. Whatever you want, we will do that. So that is in terms of the turning point. Once you know there are people there supporting you, there may be other people who are not supporting, there may be millions of them. We don't care, because you are not going to be bothered about so many people outside your realm of, friends and family. So as long as the people are there supporting, and also even if they don't support, anybody not supporting, it is immaterial. If you want to do something, go ahead and do it. But in my case, I've been lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so lovely to hear, because it sounds like both of you had very distinct yet overlapping support systems, and you really tapped into them. And I can see here everyone is sharing. I believe it's your brother and Aunty Meena who said Sivakami lives her life on her own terms and her brothers were always behind her. And Aunty Tina said we will always have your back. I believe also Aunty Malini, sorry if you're not an auntie, but I can't see faces.
Of course.
She said, oh yes, Aunty Malini, yes. I know all of you now.
Right.
Totally agree. And kudos to Kirti for being a trailblazer in the family, like we mentioned earlier. But if you take a moment to consider it, Sivakami was a great trailblazer in her own right. I think we've heard this word 3 times today. I'm sure she inspired and gave strength to many young women who went through similar experiences. And actually, that was really why I was really excited to have Aunty on today. As I mentioned, we always hear from our community, but actually to get our parents involved and share their journeys and their perspectives, I feel like there's real power in that. So I'm getting so many more messages. Rupesh said, really inspiring insights. Thank you so much. And Sneha said, luck comes to courageous people, which I don't disagree with. So just wrapping up maybe chapter 2, Kirti, what advice would you give? I know there's a lot of people here who are at different stages of coming out to their family. Some have, some haven't. What advice would you give to anyone who's sort of grappling with this, with their identity?
I think it is tricky. And I think one of the things I would say before, there's many spheres of our lives. And one of the things I have to come out to is patients. See, I'm a GP, and a lot of patients ask you, and you might have asked your GP, but they ask personal questions. And I'm quite a personable GP, and those who know me know that I talk a lot about myself. So it became awkward when I didn't want to. I don't like lying, and so for me, I couldn't make something up. And so I think there's a time and place. One thing I'd say is, sort your sexuality out in your own time, and there's always a time and place to say things. So I didn't necessarily feel the need to come out to my patients per se, but there was a point where it felt right to me to not necessarily hide it. You don't have to lie, but it's about sharing is needed, and sharing when you're comfortable, because it really, I think we sometimes put pressure on ourselves for not always being totally authentic and open with everyone, and it's not the same as hiding or shame. Sometimes there's a place and a time for sharing and coming out, and sometimes a place for, what, this is just information that I'll hold on to for now. And I think and it's up to you to gauge that, and it may be your family, it may be your work, for example. Obviously if you're not a doctor, you have other people that you'd be talking to at work, but there's a point where it's no longer feasible for you to be inauthentic, and that's where it's you can make those steps to change that, and it can be one person at a time. It doesn't have to be a writing on the wall Facebook announcement or whatever. It just can be take your time with it. There's no one pressuring you. And I've been very lucky mostly with all the reactions. I think, honestly, I think you see TV and you're like, everyone's going to hate me and I'll be left with nobody, but the world has changed. And I think there's a lot of other people out there experiencing, I'm not talking about gay community, but there's the trans community. I think keeping an open mind for those aunties and uncles out there, but also, to each other, we're all just trying to make it in this world and find our happiness. And I think that's all there is. And, you just figure out what that's for you.
I love that. I love what you said earlier, which was a really nice soundbite about like, know when you can't stop being inauthentic to yourself anymore. And that's when you know the steps you need to take. Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And Aunty, from your perspective through this journey.
So I think it is important. What made the thing for me and Kirthi is to build that relationship. It took us a long time to build that relationship, but we went through a lot of difficult time. And understanding and what she said the last before all this came about, we really worked on it, and the relationship is important. And then when she says, then because the relationship is there and the trust is there, then you are more likely to accept it for the parents to to make that it is an extra length. For some people it comes naturally. For me, I had to work on it. It didn't just come naturally to build up that relationship with the daughter and the son as well. So if you have a good relationship, it makes it easy in many ways. So then the kids don't have the fear of coming and sharing. And my husband also helped Ranga. He really helped me. Many times he used to say, why your daughter is not coming here more often, because you are constantly telling her something, let go and support her. Then my first question to him was, what do you mean by support? So we went through that first, and then, the ability to support her for whatever it is. You don't have to be sitting there judgmental all the time and tell her what is right, what is not right. Just give her that love and support her, and then things will work out. I think that's what she's talking about. He was giving that unconditional love, and that made a difference. So the relationship with the kids, the children, regardless of what the age is, that is something one needs to work on, similar to the husband and wife relationship. That is when then you don't lose the kids. They are always there with you in the journey. That's what I feel. So that's important bit, I think, and accepting people. And I think from my perspective, and it's one thing I felt, who am I to judge somebody? Once the kids are grown up, we are two adults. We are in the journey together to some length, and after that, they are adults, the adult-to-adult relationship. So there are so many people out there, and nobody knows what type of life each one has, because they are your kids, you come to know. So who am I to judge that? This is what is there, the God has given. I can accept with a happy feeling, sad feeling, I can reject, whatever it is, up to me. But I can't be in the judgmental position, what you're doing is right or wrong or whatever. We don't know. So the acceptance is important for the kids, because then they feel good.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Auntie. There's Tina actually shared it. Love the concept, what we were saying earlier about finding your own time to be your authentic self. It's definitely a personal journey, but also I found it a great way to build genuine connection and share our unique challenges and struggles. Thank you for sharing that, Tina. And Sapna said, you're very insightful, Sivakami, a great role model. And Shanta said, I love what you said about working on relationships, no matter if they're your partner or your child. That's so true. It's actually something I've never thought about from that perspective, because our parents tell us, no matter how old you are, you're still my baby, right? I'm sure a lot of parents here have said it to their kids before. We've got some questions that I am coming to in a moment, but I guess that really rounds up our second chapter, which is coming out. So I know we've had a few people join. We've been doing this in 3 chapters. The first one is all about Aunty Sivakami's and Kirthi's growing up stories and backgrounds. Then we've talked about the whole coming out journey from both perspectives. And now we're getting to my favorite part, which is all about getting married. So we've got so many questions coming in specifically about that. But I think number one, for me, Kirthi, seeing your wedding pictures brought me so much joy. enjoy. They were also beautiful. And I'm sure many other people would have felt that same way looking at them. I know on our particular Facebook group, everyone was losing their minds. They were just such stunning photos. I wanted to take a moment to go back to the time at that point where you actually, you know, coming out was one thing and now saying, hey, mom, I want to make things official, especially with coming from quite that Orthodox background. And we talked about earlier, how did that go down? And Anusha Saxena has asked, how, very similarly, how did you approach that idea of marriage and knowing your partner is the one? So maybe as part of that, you can also share how you and Anita met.
Absolutely. So, wow. I mean, I think for me, I have to say my relationship with marriage came to a point, and I'm, you know, without going through how old I am, although most people could probably figure it out, you know, I went to this point of really, I was okay with not ever getting married. You know, there's a point where I'm like, you know, I felt over the hill. And I think for me, you know, I sort of let go of this concept that to be an acceptable Indian woman, or even in any society, you know, Indian or not, you have to be married, you know, you have to be settled. And that's when I met Anita, you see. So it was this element of, it wasn't expected. I was visiting Brisbane. So I do skin cancer work as well. So I was visiting Brisbane for a conference where Anita was living at that time in the Sunshine Coast, which is about an hour and a half from Brisbane. But she was working in Brisbane. So we met, you know, fortuitously then. Neither of us probably expecting to find a relationship. So I think I wasn't looking, and certainly for me, the concept of, you know, having a matrimony.com for gay women, and there might be now, I don't know, but at that time I'm like, no, that's not possible. So really it was, you know, how do I find any sort of happiness? So we met online actually, and a site specific for women, but really we met as friends, and we went from there. So it was you know, it was a sort of instant connection, and, you know, certainly what I thought you would get, you know, that sort of butterflies in your stomach feeling, and, you know, went from there. I went back to Melbourne, and we communicated long distance for about a year, but really soon, within a few months, we knew this was something really special. And you know, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but my mum's sort of my best friend, and so the first person I want to tell was my mum. And so, you know, it's this for me, it was very much like, you know, how do I, you know, I still was frightened to tell her I'm dating a woman, you know, I just was a bit, how do I do this? But there's no choice, you know. Anita felt like the one to me, and I wanted her to know, because, like I said, you know, you kind of know when you need to be authentic. And until that point, we had a very don't ask, don't tell policy. You know, it worked out really well for us in that sense. So I introduced her. I think before I introduced her, I took him for a drive. So this is my tip. I'm like, I'll drive. They're in the car. They can't go anywhere. But also we can't all look at each other directly. So I can't see how disappointed they are or not. So I was driving, and we went for a drive, which is something we like to do. And I just said, look, I need to tell you something. I'm seeing somebody in Queensland, and she was to come the week after or something, like, and I wanted to introduce her. So I was like, I'd like to say that it's a woman. And I think mum's first reaction, and mum, you can correct me, but I think her first reaction was, is she Indian? And I think I said, no, mum, her name's Anita, so it's sort of Indian. But no, she's not Indian. And the second question was, can you have children? And I said, yeah, like we would love to have children one day. And, you know, I think she thought about that, and that was it. Like, she sort of accepted. And I think there was this, as I said, this trust, and she's, you know, I think she knew by then if it had to be serious, if I was introducing, you know, or planning to introduce Anita to her. So, yeah, I think that's, I mean, you know, and certainly our journey is you know, like any other journey, I guess, you know, you meet someone, you sort of make sure you have the same values and you're going on the same path. And, you know, culturally, there's a difference. Anita's Australian, and, you know, you just need someone that's open to accepting you as you are, accepting that you're Indian, accepting that you have your own traditions and cultures, and you know, she'll participate when you know, I give her like prasad from a puja. I make her do some namaskaram here or there. Does she get it all? No, but, you know, that's relationships, right? You sort of compromise and you make it work with each other. And yeah, so that was my part. And I think Mum, I don't know how it was for you, but I think she met Anita quite soon in our relationship.
Yeah, I was just going to say before Auntie shares her side of the story, when you were saying, is he Indian? Alan, who is on our board, he said the second question is she rich? That's always marry a rich Indian man. But Auntie, from your perspective, well, I mean, what was your reaction?
So as I said, even before, my first reaction that she found somebody is the important bit. And then I was wondering about what this life is going to be, because it's not going to be easy life, because in many ways it is, even if you want to follow somebody, you know, some model or whatever, there's not many people out there where you can just follow, because that's not the normal per se. Like people project outside, you know, there's the only thing is the man and the woman is the only thing that is, you know, projected so well in the movies and everywhere you go. So it is going to be, you know, difficult. You have to find your path. How do you do it? And how will it work? All that questions went on my head at that time. But so, as I said, she was also telling me, if you don't like to hear that or whatever it is, then I can leave and all that. She said to me at that time, I said, and if I don't support her, nobody is going to support her. Who is going to support her? So she's my daughter, and if I'm not supporting, the whole world is not looking for a Kirthi to support. So it is for me to support her. This is the choice. And also the underlying trust is what is, I said to myself, she knows what she's doing. It is not that she doesn't know. She has gone through so many people. Finally, she's saying that this is what it is. So she knows, she has done her homework. She has done whatever that is required. So because of that, I just have to say that, you know, she knows what she's doing, so we will go with it. And I just have to support her. There's no one, if I don't support my own child, who's going to support? Nobody else will. So I just have to do what is right. And that's what I wanted to do. What is right is what I should do, and that's what I did. Yeah.
I know, Auntie, you were a very big part of that whole process as well, which I would love to talk about in a second. But Geeta is saying that the Australian legislation change was also timely and enabled marriage in Australia, which of course is the big thing. So let's talk about marriage, Kirthi. How did you plan the wedding? You know, some of the, I know in Hindu, and also, I mean, I'm from a Muslim background, a lot of those rituals are really deep-rooted in long-standing patriarchal traditions. So how did you navigate that?
I mean, I always feel like I should direct this to my mother. I think I always wanted a Hindu wedding, but to be honest, I think I let go of that being gay. I just didn't think that was something that I could do or that could be done in the context of me and my family. But my mom I think she said to me after so Anita and I got engaged, and she asked, do you want a Hindu wedding? And I said, yeah, I'd love one. And that was it. So my mum is a project manager from a project manager background, and she pretty much took that, and that was it. It wasn't exactly it. And of course, there was a lot of intercultural communication with Anita and her family, so it wasn't completely, all mum. But she really, I have to give her the credit, did the groundwork, had those conversations, found a priest, pretty much had that determination of, well, if it, and of course there was no one to copy, like she said, there's no person to ask. So she made those inquiries, and, I have to say it was a pretty amazing wedding. But I'll let Mum sort of go to speak to that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So she wanted a Hindu wedding, and I just said to myself, I don't understand why there can't be a Hindu wedding. Hinduism, anything is possible because it's a very open and very welcoming religion. It is. Nobody says you can't do this, you can't do that. It is always welcoming, So I thought, let me find out, why can't I do it? So we just inquired, and we found a priest. There are things you can do, some things you can't do, but And between anyway, nowadays, with the amount of time people want to spend on the wedding, there is not much that you need to do. So I said, let's go ahead. And I asked what are the things they like. And Anita said she liked the mehendi, and Kitty said she wanted the mehendi. I said, okay, we can have a mehendi function. And there are things about the garland, the saris they wanted to buy. I said, okay, we'll get the saris, garland, whatever you want. I mean, there's nothing stopping. Nobody says there is only one way to live the life, right? So it's just do whatever that is, you like. So we did similar to that, except some of the aspects we didn't cover. But even in the male to female wedding, not everything is covered. Nowadays, the kids say, no, I only want this and only part of it. And I still remember my uncle was asking for my son's wedding. I said to him, I want a Hindu wedding. He says, I understand. So which one you want? I said, what do you mean? There's only one Hindu wedding, isn't it? He says, do you want a half an hour one? You want a 1 hour one? You want a 2 hour one or 4 days one? I was thinking, I didn't even know that they existed. So there are so many things we change, right? And nobody is stopping anybody, changing it to whatever you want to make it out of that. So we said, okay, we will have that wedding. So based on what they wanted, we just, fine-tuned some of them. We went about it and organized everything. I just checked people are comfortable in the hall to have this type of wedding, and the photographer and video and everybody is happy with that, and got all the support from the family, friends, everybody to keep going. And that's what we did. So
Aunty, were you the person who found the priest?
Yeah, the priest, my uncle suggested that there's a priest in Sydney who will do it. And we just spoke to him and he was quite happy to do it. And it was good.
Yeah. And had he done...
worked out well.
Sorry, Kirti?
I think, and through COVID, we managed to have it in Melbourne, 120 people.
Did you, had he done, I'm sure he'd done many of them then before.
I think we were the third in Australia. So he had done 2 others prior.
Amazing, amazing. And Swaroop, who's on our call today, has asked, do you have any examples of any traditional rituals that you modified for the wedding, which is traditionally between a husband and wife? And also, do you have any funny stories to share?
There was nothing that we had to change, because it doesn't say the male and the female like that in that Hindu wedding. I don't believe so, especially the 7 steps and all. Absolutely nothing about the sex at all in there. So as a partner, they take the 7 steps to live together.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything they need to change. Only when they need a man to go, what do they call it? Kasyatra, where the man goes, and then the father of the girl goes, brings him back and saying, we will marry you off, and whatever it is. That one, because there is no male, we didn't have that. But pretty much everything else, there's nothing. It's not totally sex-based, as I understand.
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, Anita and I had a chance to talk to the priest beforehand and get to sort of see, because I think, and this may be the way I approached Hinduism, but for me, it was very much like you sort of do what your parents tell you, like you rock up to the puja. Like my understanding of Hinduism, I have to say, it wasn't great, but I loved I loved being at these pujas and receiving the blessings, and I always felt very connected. So when Anita was asking me, like, what is a Hindu wedding? I had to sort of Google it, and a lot of it was I didn't know. And certainly the priest helped a lot about that. He sort of went through it, and yeah, the one where I did Kasyatra, as Mum said, was definitely not something we needed to do, but a lot of it was adaptable. And he'd already adapted it, which is really, really helpful. He's pretty amazing in that forward-thinking way. He'd already changed a lot of the wording and made it and look, I have to say, some of the people here have been to the wedding, but he really made it accessible for everyone. He sort of, explained what was going on, which was different to many Hindu weddings where you sort of sit there and you have no idea. There's Sanskrit chanting and you have no idea. So it was really great because he sort of made it really accessible to many of the people who were there to sort of understand. And it was beautiful, really. If you look at it, it really is a beautiful wedding. And the meaning around that is really quite powerful.
Yeah. I believe that Auntie Geeta has said she really enjoyed it was a beautiful, magical ceremony, she says, and she loved the part where 2 Mangal Sutras were tied. I can imagine that's quite a moment that really shifts something in you. I wanted to ask, there's so many different questions coming in, but Auntie Gayatri has asked, your family has been really supportive. And of course, kudos to them. Of course, we said it's been a process for everyone, but what about the community? And this, I guess, ties into another question we were going to ask that I know Auntie Sivakami, you talked about earlier, where you're like, I don't really care what society thinks. I will support my daughter. But how did you I'm sure there were people who, might have been talking in other people's ears, and these things always have a way of finding them back, back to the family. How did you navigate them, and how did the community take it?
To be honest, the people, we only had a very restricted amount of people. Whoever came really supported us in that thing. The community, there may be people talking about that. I'll tell you what, once they know this is possible, there are many people waiting to make it happen. So people are saying behind your back, whatever. I don't know. I never heard anything. And also I told before, I never bothered to listen to all those conversations because it is so much negative energy for me. And it didn't bother me at all, to be honest. I just wanted to live my life, and that's what it is. And people will always tell you. I still remember at the age of 26, when my husband died, people will come and say, you know what a life she has got. There was an old lady. She comes and says to my mother, what is she going to do? What type of a life is this and this and that? And that put me off. And I'm thinking, why is she coming and crying here? Because I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. This is not what I am looking for. And so I told my mother, I don't want to see any of these people. So please don't bring them here. I don't want to see them, because you need to go look for what you can get, the support, not this other side. That will always be there. And why would you go and pay attention to that? Because that's not going to help you. And I found that the more positivity you have, the less energy you spend in actually doing things. The more negativity you have, you spend so much more energy to do the same thing. So from that perspective, I never looked at what community felt. I still don't know. Do they accept me? It doesn't matter. They can accept, not accept. It doesn't matter. I have my family. They all support me. And there are friends who support me. And there is, that itself is a lot of people there who are supporting. Like Malini, this auntie there. So my brother, all these people, Geeta, all those people, they have been supporting. So I don't have to sit and think about who is not supporting, because there is so much of support available already.
That's so true.
We're very lucky that way. I just want to share, my aunt in India, my mum shared with my aunts in India. So I've got my biological father's family are still in India. I met many of them. And actually they were the ones I was so scared to come out to, because I think they're my link to my dad. And I thought, if they didn't approve, that's all I've got of him. But they, I think my aunt, I was in tears, but my aunt was pretty much like, we love you, and, whoever you love, that's okay. And I was blown away. They've grown up in India, and I just did not expect that. But my aunt actually said something quite wise, which was, people will say they'll support you, but actually it could take time, for them to really understand. So even then, you don't always know, right, what people are telling you and what they're saying or believing, but you just got to trust that you live your life and you do the best as a human being and as a person, that eventually people will get that you're just making your own happiness in the world, no matter what they say, or, so she was quite wise in that. She's like, whatever they say now, it'll probably take time. And she was right.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, it's not about me, but from my experience, I think I told my family in 2017, and it still feels like it happened yesterday, and a lot of them are still going through that process. So I totally understand. It takes time, and it takes a lot of love and patience also, which I guess no one really tells you that those things form part of the process. You might think you're just going to be hated and shunned, but there's so many, secret answers C, I guess, is what we have.
Yeah.
I do want to share some of the other comments coming through where Kiran Jessel shared that your story and courage will inspire many more people to live their truth. And I'm so glad you've said that, Kiran, because that's exactly the reason we wanted to have this session today. And Mina says, when they see that we are all accepting and celebrating, it helps to change others' minds and they tend to follow. So I'm really, really happy to see all of these comments coming in. And Jen said, your mom is an amazing, strong advocate, Kirti, and we really see that. And Aunty, I've only spoken to you, this is the second time, and I already feel, such connection. And I know that a lot of people here are really grateful for that.
Thank you.
So Kirti, just a few other questions, and then, I can open it up to everyone else, although I know you've been sharing some. What advice would you give? Actually, maybe I'll ask you this first. This is a question from Sneha. It's all about dating, actually. So do you have any tips on navigating online dating as a queer woman of color in Australia? How do you remain optimistic?
Yeah, good question. I think you've got to, gosh, I was like, Anita and I have been together for 4 years. And I think for me, I just had to come to terms. gosh, I didn't know any, and literally, I didn't even know this group existed till you contacted me. So I think one thing is, I think the awareness isn't there. I did look briefly online, but I think for me, trying to find another queer Asian felt like, I don't know, finding an alien or something. It was just like, there's no one else out there. So I think, Sneha, meeting you guys now, it's been great, but certainly that wasn't there, or I wasn't aware of it. So I think you've got to figure out, and this is for any relationship, surely, that, what are you looking for? And really, you sort of have to distill that essence. Anita and I have a lot of cultural differences, and that's, can be tough, at times, you sometimes, and moving up here to Queensland was tough too, because not a huge amount of diversity up here, but, it's being true to who you are and what you're looking for. And then for me, gosh, online dating, but it was always be as honest as you can, there's nowhere to hide. There's plenty of places to hide online, but there's nowhere to hide when you meet people, and it's not worth hiding anyway, because, a real relationship is, of course, built on trust and honesty. But I think letting expectations go. So I met Anita when I was completely and utterly happy to be single. I was living my life in Melbourne in my little Satyara apartment, and having all my little friends and going out for drinks. And I really enjoyed myself. And, but I think, and Mum's sort of said that too, having a partner is important, and it may not be important to everyone, but it was important to me, and she knew that about me. And I think, that Mum, this is another thing my mum would always say, the right person at the right time. And I think that's what it took for Anita and I. We were both in the right place to meet someone. And, I think you've got to make it work. I think for me, it wasn't easy. There were times when I'm like, is this right? You always second guess yourself, but there's an element of faith that is love, I think. And this is true. I'm sure a lot of people find that you just got to have some faith that, that person will have you, have your back, and you'll have theirs. And it doesn't matter where they're from or who they are, gender, race, you've got to figure that out for yourselves between each other. If that helps, I hope that answers the question.
Sneha, if you've got more though, just keep them coming, and I'm sure we can ask. I know we've got maybe around 10 minutes left, and I have just a couple more questions to wrap us up. Kirti, any advice for people who might be thinking of planning their weddings coming up? Any hot tips that we can take away?
Look, I think, for me, the wedding planning, especially the Hindu wedding, and Anita and I have been married twice now. We had a civil wedding up here on the coast about a month ago now, just under a month ago, is, the thing about a wedding is it's this powerful moment where you make these promises to each other, and you have it with your family and friends. And I think you've got to make sure that there's a lot of stuff. And even for me, it was overwhelming. And I know there was a point where I just was telling Mum, like, there's just too much, and I felt between Mum and Anita and the family expectations. But I think it is about two people, ultimately it's about you and your wife, husband, whoever you're marrying. And that's something to not lose sight of. And I think there were times when I felt, cultural this, or I've got to please Mum for this, but really you've got to make sure you're doing what's true to you. And you know, and you know, making it, knowing what you want. I think knowing what you want in that marriage and what you want that to represent is really important going in, and just being able to communicate that is really important. But that's something you can create together, and that's a great thing about Hinduism, but many hopefully other religions too, is that there is a lot of room for interpretation and for making that something that's very personal to you.
I think someone earlier said that Hinduism allows improvisation. I can't speak for all Hindus, but maybe that is true. I wish that was the same for other, I guess, religions of the book, but I do know also in part that there's so many people today, as Aunty said, everything from a half-an-hour express wedding to a 4-year, you know, extended affair. There's just so many options out there. And, you know, the fact that everyone's questioning things a little bit more, you know, same-sex couples or people of the opposite sex is just really interesting and also really fulfilling to see. Aunty, what about you? Do you have any sort of tips on, you know, how people should approach their family if they're planning to take this step? Is there any right or wrong way?
There is no right or wrong way. Just be honest and open about it. Tell the truth as it is. And we will find that once you go with that feeling and doing the right thing, then there's more likelihood of accepting. You don't have to hide anything. You just have to tell them what you feel like doing. And that's pretty much, and do the right thing, right? Whatever it is right, don't tell them, honest, open. Have the honest, open conversation with, if it is the parents or whoever it is that you need to go through with, open up and tell them. You will be surprised. Many a times people will come to the party much easier than what you actually think. So that is the important bit. There's no point in, you know, hiding that feeling. What matters to you will definitely matter to the parents as well, because they want you to be happy at the end of the day. So be open about it.
That's so true. That's so true. I remember one of my aunts said to me, oh, you know, you're still Zara. Nothing's changed about you. And I was like, what were you expecting something to change about me? I'm still the same person. So Aunty, that's so true. Those open and honest conversations, they can take a lot of courage and be challenging, but definitely something for us to take away from.
And one
other thing is also with the wedding, you need to know what you want. You may have to do a little bit of research to see what is that you're looking for. Then only you can go and have the conversation. I mean, she told me she wanted the Hindu wedding. As I said, in Hindu wedding, which part do you want? How much do you want? So, I mean, these are the things, once you have, you know, gone through, decided, then it is easy to implement. But you need to know what you want.
And one thing I wanted to share quickly, just when you're having these conversations, not so much wedding related, but one thing that I did learn that was probably helpful is not to put your expectations or projections. So when I was telling mum, you know, knowing that whatever they say back at you, you can be okay with. I think I tried very hard not to become defensive, or, you know, it's just letting them, because I know I made my journey in peace with my sexuality, but letting them make whoever you're telling their journey with it. And, you know, thankfully no one really treated me particularly differently, at least not to my knowledge. But it was just being okay with that, letting people take the time that they need. And then even if they never come around, well, you know, for me it was, well, I can only live my life as I am.
The other part to that is, I find that first of all, the person needs to accept their sexuality first. The main part I find, I think with Kirthi growing up, that's where the biggest hurdle was. You know, because people feel it is not okay. And that acceptance takes a long time. You feel, you know, I can't tell other people about it. I think that's where the biggest hurdle I feel is. Once you accept yourself, then you can talk about it. You can share it. You can tell whatever you want to tell to the other people about it and live your life the way you want it. But acceptance takes a long time, even for the same person about themselves. That's what I found took a long time.
Absolutely. And Kirthi and Aunty, I guess we had a question that we skipped over earlier because it was just going into the flow of the conversation. But with Anita's side of the family, Kirthi, you mentioned that, you know, she comes from quite a different cultural background. Would you be comfortable sharing a little bit more about that? And, you know, was this process quite like sort of similar for her, or was it just very easy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly, I don't want to say too much about Anita, but Anita's from a Catholic background traditionally, but I, from my knowledge, not practicing. And certainly, you know, when we first met, she wasn't, I think she didn't mind if we can get married. You know, it wasn't ever, I can't say forced marriage on her, but I think there was an element of, she was okay with us just being the way we are. But I think for me, it was certainly something I've always wanted. So she never had this, I don't think she came with any sort of preconceived notion of what a wedding is, you know. And you know, as young women, we get told a lot of women plan their weddings, you know. I don't think that was never Anita, you know. She didn't have this scrapbook of cutouts of what she wanted at all, and neither did I, to a certain degree. And in some ways that made it harder because you know, we didn't really know what we wanted. But for the Hindu wedding, you know, I think that there was some challenges, but both the parents participated. We adapted thing. I think one of the things we didn't want was that giving away notion of sitting on, you know, the father's lap. I don't know if people know about that Hindu wedding, but there's that, you know, tying the Mangalsutra on the father's lap. You know, we both wanted to meet, you know, we're independent women, you know, we very much altered that. And her parents participated, and her sister did too. And I think a lot of that's just, you know, they were aware that this is culturally important to us and they were happy to participate. But it's different for them. So I don't think they had a huge amount of say except turn up and, you know, sit here and throw the rice then and that sort of stuff. But they were quite willing to participate and happy to do so.
That's lovely. I have a question from Disha who asks, how long do you wait for someone to accept your choices before you just decide to move ahead?
For me, I think you have to, and I don't know who exactly you mean, but if it's your parent, you just have to keep living your life. I don't know if you can wait. Life's pretty short. And I think certainly for me, I don't know if it was waiting for mum to accept, more for me to accept, you know. I think there's this element of I had to make that journey for myself. And once you've accepted whatever you need to do and you're quite confident of your path, you have to live it, you know. And it's, you know, you want your parents' support. We all do. And I don't think that's an Indian thing. I think it's a human thing. You know, we need, you know, these are the people that raise you, and they're your first sort of safety net. They're your first sort of people you go to for, you know, when you need that, you're lost and you don't know where to go. And so I think you just, you keep, that's being adult, and you have to forge your path. You have to figure out where you want to be in life. And then there's no waiting, you know, you've just got to take those decisions, I think, and they'll feel right, you know, like mum did, you know, they'll feel right at that time. You just, you know, you can't always listen to what people to say. She made that courageous decision to leave India at 26 with 2 kids. So, you know, she has to, you just got to go with what feels right for you. And I think a lot of the time it's like, for me, I'm always like, am I harming anyone really? Is this, what's this doing? Am I doing anything for the world that's, you know, that's really causing any grief or harm to anybody else? If it's not, then really, as long as you're happy, go for it, is what I say. Yeah. And the harm, I think, and harm is great, you know, are you harming your parents? Well, look, that's, you know, are they going to be devastated for you? Is that harm? But really it's a choice that we all make, right? There's a way of looking at things. It's not like I've hurt somebody physically. You know, there's that element of, I'm just finding my happiness. So where's the harm there is what I look at. And then any way it's seen is sort of, and it sounds harsh, but it's a choice they make, not a choice that you've made for yourself, you know. And that's hard, you know, to accept, because we're brought up to be good people and good daughters or sons, but you've got to allow people to grow with you, and that's a growth journey that your parents have to make, or whoever it is that you're referring to.
That's so true. Allow people to grow with you. You know, you've had so much time to come to that decision. They need that same amount of time too. And I think that's something that Aunty Sivakami, you spoke about earlier, that whole process of, you know, coming to those decisions yourself. I have one last question, and then, you know, happy to hear from everyone else. But Aunty and Kirthi, I guess, wedding vows done, you know, looking ahead. I know I've got so many questions of people asking, when is she going to have babies? So just so you know, it doesn't always happen to people from like the opposite sex. That's always the next thing. But yeah, do y'all have any other big life decisions coming up, Aunty and Kirthi? Any human babies? I know you've got 2 fur babies.
I mean, I'm trying to protect our privacy here, but absolutely, we you know, that was part of our journey to have children, for sure. You know, and that's another journey for us. And I think mum was quite concerned about that too, is, you know, can you have kids? I know she wants to have grandchildren. but yeah, absolutely, it's in our plans, and you know, making that work, especially with COVID, has been a bit challenging. But I think really, you know, and that's the thing, you know, that a lot of people may not want kids, and it's about trying to make it all acceptable. You know, whatever the decisions you make that's right for you, your partner, whether it's just you for yourself, it's about taking that how we normalize society. I mean, a lot of what we've done is normal, but it's totally, and one of the things I wanted to say is it would have been okay if I didn't find any in some ways. I would have been okay just as me and single, and, you know, not having children as well. I happen to found it, I'm very happy, but you know what I mean? I think for me, it was always trying to have those conversations where it's okay, whoever you are and whatever journey you're making in life. And yeah, but yes, definitely kids are there. And I think that was a big concern. And I think it's a concern for many parents is, can they have kids? What's going to happen there? And how will the kids be? And I think that's, and certainly I've got some friends here that are in same-sex relationship and raising kids. And, you know, I think that was my mum's concern. Are they going to be discriminated against? Are people going to judge them as kids? You know, life is hard. But, you know, there's some amazing same-sex couple out there, you know, making it work, as we all do. You're just trying to have your family and raise them in this world. So yeah, we do want to have kids, and we're, yeah, watch the space. I guess that'll be the next raising children in South Asian family of mixed heritage. But yeah.
Aunty, what about you? Any other big dreams that you have for your family?
Or whatever they want to do, whatever they want to do. See, I think from my perspective, we have done whatever we need to do for them to come this far. And we have supported whatever they do, we'll support. We'll continue to support them. And that's what it is. If they want to have kids, they can have kids. If they don't, if they choose not to have kids also. I mean, after some age, they are like your friends. There is no way you can influence. You can influence to some extent. You can't dictate or tell them what they have to do in life. That's what it is. Whatever they want to do, we are there.
Well, with that, Kirti and Aunty Sivakami, I cannot tell you how fulfilling the session has been. And it's one of our biggest sessions we've actually run. I know that your family, I can see Uncle going, yes. I know that your family probably has made up a third of everyone here today, which is just so special in itself. And I already feel so connected to all of you. So next Diwali, I'm self-inviting myself to your homes. So thank you everyone for being here. I would just, feel free everyone to unmute yourselves. And if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. And with that, we will, after that, wrap up. And thank you all for the beautiful messages you've also been sending through to us. So why don't everyone just unmute yourself, share any final few words, and let's go out on a bit of a high.
Yes, thanks everyone for coming. It's been lovely.
I can see your uncle clapping.
Thank you. From my perspective, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
And it has been so nice to see so many people. And if we can make a difference in the world, it is really good.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You already have, Sivakami.
Thank you.
You already have.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Aunty Meena and Uncle, did you want to, I heard you all, I could see you all saying things, but you are on mute. I don't know if you might want to unmute yourself.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether we want to hi, darling.
Hi, Kanna.
We know Kirti from when she was a baby. Uncle Swami knows from when she was a baby, and I met her when I got married first and came here, and she was 2 years old. And the day I arrived, I wanted to sleep because I hadn't slept on the flight, and she sat next to me and she talked non-stop. And that was the Kirti we knew. She was so lively. She was just so much into it. And then came her teen years, and we saw that she was struggling with herself. There was something there that we could not figure what it was, and she didn't know herself. And that is why I think the support comes from, because we suddenly saw that she found happiness and she found the solution of whatever was wrong, And so acceptance just came automatically. So we are so very happy for both Sivakami and Kirthi. She used to
Anita.
and she used to call my husband the Appa, father, which means father. When I had just got married, and I thought I haven't had children as yet, but he has. But
It's his first child.
she went through.
Yes.
She went through a lot of traumatic years, and she's come out good. That's all we want, Kirthi. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Mummy. Thanks, Mama. Good. Thank you all for joining. That's been lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm such a weeper. I'm just crying quietly in the corner. I wanted to just maybe, please feel free to leave if you have to, but just wanted to take a moment and share all the beautiful messages coming in. Swarup said, thank you for sharing your journey, Kirthi and Aunty. You both are truly an inspiration. Would love to meet you. There you go. You're going to have more than one Diwali gate crasher. Rupesh says, thank you, Sivaka, Aunty and Kirthi. Jen said, such a pleasure hearing your journey, Kirthi and Aunty, and seeing the obvious love, strength, and support of your family. That's absolutely made this session actually so special. And I'm going to try not to cry while reading this because this is from my mom. She says, her name is Farida, and she's actually tuned in from Singapore today. She says, thank you very much, Kirthi and Aunty, especially for the sharing, a number of points to ponder on. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Have a beautiful evening and the rest of your week. And thank you for sharing this special hour and a half with us.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thanks, Sarah.
Very beautiful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Kirti and Aunty, you can probably just stay for a little bit with us.
Yeah,
and I'll
Mum
introduce
might
you to the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay, but Mum, how are you going? She may need to head off. My dad.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know yet. We'll see. It depends how long it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Zara. It was a lovely session.